worker, and I work for West Northants Council within adult social care. Just to sort of say, I'm not a trainer as such, but I have some experience of adult risk management meetings, and I've also done previous adult risk management meeting training. So this one today is particularly around chairing. I do briefly do a bit of an intro about an arm at the beginning, but this is mainly about chairing. Could I ask that everybody mutes, please? Oh, there is somebody. Let me just check whether I can. Oh, that's it. Sorry. And just to sort of let everybody know, this is being recorded so that it can be then sort of you can use this afterwards, and it will be on the Safeguarding Adults Board website as well. So thank you all for coming. I know there's quite a number of you, so I will apologise because this is me just doing a lot of talking, so apologies about that, but it's very difficult to do questions and make it interactive with so many people, especially via Teams, so apologies about that. I will try and do my best to keep an eye on the chat as well, so if you do have any questions, I will do my best, but I can't guarantee it that I will. But what I'll do is afterwards, I'll just keep an eye and see what's in there, and then if you know, I need to sort of come back to anything, I will do. So, okay, so I will start. So thank you very much. So here we are. This is chairing an adult risk management meeting. So I start with what is an ARM. So an ARM, an adult risk management, is about working with an individual's strengths. It's about formulating an action plan for an individual with additional care and support needs where there are significant concerns about the capacious decisions that that person may be making, and also the impact this could have on their safety and for the protection of others. It's an opportunity to ensure that all agencies have offered support and options to an individual whose life is at serious risk of harm, and it identifies responsibility for specific actions, and also it triggers a mechanism for review and re-evaluation of any action plan. So as a chair, it's really important that you sort of do understand that, because as the chair you will need to know that, especially in relation to the identifying this who is responsible for specific actions, and also the chair will be the one responsible for sort of identifying and asking and set for everybody to set a date for the next one. So that's your re-evaluation of any plan that's created. So that's an ARM. That's what an ARM is. The criteria for an ARM. So for an ARM criteria, all of the below should apply. So an individual should have capacity to make decisions regarding the specific decision that is causing a concern. And please, what I sort of do say to people is may not just be about one particular decision, it may be about several different risks. So you need to sort of take that on board when you're sort of looking at that. That the person who is concerned and thinks that a person might meet the criteria for an ARM is in no doubt that the person has capacity and should state the reasons. And when we say provide proof, it is about actually identifying, well, this is the risk that I'm identifying. This is the why I believe the risk meets the criteria, because there's a risk management scoring for ARMs. And the reason why I believe they've got capacity is because of this, this and this. So sort of evidencing why and how that person has come to that decision. So also that there is risk of serious harm or death through severe neglect, fire, deteriorating health conditions, declining to work with services, where somebody's being targeted by the local community, could be hate crime, antisocial behaviour, somebody might be at risk of sexual violence, or just declining to engage with a single agency. Or there might be
getting it for you, mate.
Other.
I had to send it to my personal email so I can then copy and paste it on here for you.
Sorry, can you mute, please? Thank you. And where there's a public safety interest or there's a high level of concerns from partner agencies. So that's the criteria for the arm. And then in relation to definitions of serious harm, this is the guidance that we use. This is in the policy within the arm, and the policy is with the Safeguarding Adults Board website. So the definition of serious harm, we're sort of saying that serious harm refers to the death or injury, either physical, psychological, which is life-threatening and or traumatic, and is viewed to be imminent or very likely to occur. The Social Care of Institute gives us definitions of self-neglect, where they've got 3 strands. So we're looking at self-care, where there's a lack of care over personal hygiene, health, nutrition or hydration. And that could mean, you know, that encounters quite a lot of people. Yesterday, I was doing a discussion around multiple exclusion homelessness, and that is definitely somewhere somebody may sort of fall under that bracket. It could be somebody that has is at home and is sort of not managing their diabetes, so they're neglecting themselves, they're not managing physical health things, as well as their mental well-being as well. It could be about the environment, where there is lack of care leading to squalor or hoarding, and that's something that's sort of something that we come across, and I know fire services and other services and housing sort of come across that. And also it could be refusal of services which mitigate harm, such as help with alcoholism or risk-taking behaviour. And I suppose the thing that people need to understand is that just because somebody says no does not mean that we should sort of stop at that point, because the Care Act does include self-neglect within adult within adult safeguarding, and some self-neglect cases will be managed through the safeguarding procedure under a Section 42 inquiry. However, it may be that actually an arm might be more appropriate and may run alongside other parts of things that are happening. So I know when I do the full arm training, I talk about MAPA, multi-agency protection meetings, and MARAC, and all, and so you know this arm can run alongside that. So chairing. So when it comes to chairing a meeting, sort of for the person that's doing it, so you know, when I sort of wanted to look into this as to, you know, what makes a good chair. So, you know, a chairperson, that's the person that is sort of making sure that the arm is set and has all the information that they need. So it needs to be somebody that's going to help that meeting run smoothly and efficiently. The person who chairs a meeting can sometimes be called a facilitator. I mean, we just use chair very often in adult social care, but in other organisations they can be a facilitator. They will make sure that all the relevant information that is discussed, all relevant information is discussed and everyone has an opportunity to be heard. And the risk management plan is agreed and clarified and the meeting starts and finishes on time, because it's very easy sometimes for meetings to extend past any sort of time frame, and sometimes what that means is you're not sort of pulling together the various points that need to be discussed. So a chair should be somebody that always keeps an eye on the time. I know when I'm doing it, especially if I'm doing it via Teams, I keep an eye on my clock in the corner. If I'm doing it face to face, usually if there's a clock in the room, I just try and keep an eye on that, or have a phone close by or something, just to manage that. Also, with your a good chairperson will always be thinking about the meeting overall, and making sure that it's, you know, sort of that you're bringing everybody into it. So sometimes it's hard for a chair to be able to participate fully in the discussion, because sometimes it is about you just making sure that you're pulling everybody else together within that meeting. So it's chairing a meeting will be aiming to draw a balance between hearing everyone's views and getting through sort of the business. And I think sometimes you have to sort of be mindful that somebody's views may be different, especially around risk. I know sort of I've said this before when I've talked about risk. Somebody's view of risk may be different. So it is really important to make sure that a chair can ensure that that is sort of kept neutral, and that everybody's views are brought in, and the chair then needs to agree and make sure that everybody's in agreement with the outcome of that risk decision or any management plan. And for a chair, they should never use their position as an opportunity to put forward their views to the exclusion of others. So, you know, it is not about somebody dominating a particular meeting, and especially with an arm, it is really important, especially when the individual's there, that, you know, they are central to that. So it's not for a chair to sort of take over and do that. Key roles of chairs. So, I mean, all I would say is there's no hard and fast rules about chairing a meeting. People will formulate a style and will adopt that, and it can depend on the nature of the meeting, the people involved, and obviously your own personality. So, but saying that, there are some key roles that most chairs need to adopt. So, so for those of you that sort of do this on a regular basis, what I will say is, when you're thinking about an arm, just think about how, when you're chairing other meetings, how you sort of are within that meeting, how you might present it, how you might, prepare. You'd be summing up other people's views. So you'd be the one that would be reaffirming, what people have said. And sort of be comfortable to put these across to, sort of all kinds of people that might be present. And sometimes with an arm, you might have a large group of people there, because sometimes you can be holding an arm where there are lots of different organisations, because it's not just about statutory service. We are talking about charitable organisations, or even sort of locally. Like you might have a vicar, or an advocate for individuals, or so it depends on, you could have a number of people. So it is just about feeling comfortable. So I have to say, I know there's quite a number of you here today, and I always feel quite nervous before I'm starting to do something like this, but I kind of feel like I'm almost chairing in a sense of a way as to what I'm doing today. But obviously I'm not allowing people to say too much today. So with a chair, so they are the organizer. So when you're thinking about an arm, it is important that you make sure that everybody's prepared for the meeting, who you know is going to be there. You know that you know, sort of you make sure that everybody knows the time, what's going to be discussed. So you should I've got a slide further on that talks about preparing for an ARM. So you know, you should know what's going to be discussed. You shouldn't be asked to chair a meeting and not know what any too much about that individual or the meeting that's going to take place. You might have somebody that will help you to organise that meeting, which is fine, but it is important that as a chairperson you have some knowledge beforehand. You might have somebody that might organise it, like a clerk or a business support, or somebody that might set that up for you, or even the person, the worker that's working with the individual. But again, so they might help you to bring a few things together. So you might be a communicator, making sure that everyone understands what's going on beforehand. Like I say, you might sort of reaffirm during the meeting and after the meeting, so it's very clear. You might be identified as an action person, where you're making sure the meeting is not just a talking shop, but it has a clear purpose and a result in action. And with an ARM, it is key that it's not just about everybody talking about, oh, well, you know, we've tried this, we've done that, we can't do this. It is about making sure that you're pulling together all the various organisations and identifying, I appreciate you've tried this, but is there anything more around this particular risk that you can do? Is that something you can identify? Is there something else? Do you know of any other organisations? So make sure you sort of bring it back into sort of trying to get an action or a plan identified. I mean, sometimes you might find yourself being a bit of a mediator, because there may be organisations there that perhaps might have conflicting ideas. And as I've said, when it comes to risk, people do have different views of risks. So again, as a chair, it isn't about sort of you will have a view, and it is okay to put your view, but you must make sure your own feelings don't get in the way, and you are neutral when it comes to becoming a chair. So before an ARM meeting, as I've sort of said, have knowledge of what an ARM is and what is the process. Now, I'm not the best process person. I'm a creative person. I like to sort of, you know, do things sort of slightly differently. However, having knowledge of the ARM and having a process is a good thing when it comes to these meetings, because you'll have a bit of a structure, and as a chair it's something that you can identify and make sure that it keeps to that process. Meet with the person or the worker to clarify who's coming, who's not coming, who's taking the minutes, what basic information do I need as a chair, what information from others is there whom are not attending. Sometimes it may be that people aren't able to attend. So it may be that you might have been given something, or the person who's organising it has been given something in writing. So the chair needs to have knowledge of that, because it will be the chair's responsibility to put that out there and make sure that's part of the meeting. Have a copy of the Adult Risk Management Pro Forma and use it as guidance and direction. I mean, very often we do a lot of meetings by teams nowadays. People can't always see what you've got to the side of you, and to be honest, it's okay if you're saying to somebody, if you've not done it before, you know, I am following this process, and you know, sort of use that as your guidance. Can the chair speak with the person beforehand? So the individual that the ARM meeting is about, if it's possible for the chair to sort of have that conversation with them, just to sort of reassure them as to what it's going to be. I know the person's working with them might have done that, and it might not always be possible, but it's usually good practice for the chair, where possible, to try and speak with the individual. Review any minutes or risk management plan if it's not a first meeting. So it could be that you might have had other types of meetings. You might have, sometimes people call them professional meetings or MDTs, but some of those might have happened beforehand. So it's good to have some information about that. You might not be able to hold everything, but it's good to have that. And with an ARM as well, if it's not the first meeting, for a chairperson, any previous action plan or minutes that have been identified, it's good to sort of get to sort of put eye on that and make sure you have some knowledge, because you will be reviewing that action plan. So during the ARM meeting, and you know, sort of some of this is really basic, so I'm really sorry, but it is sort of really simple. It's about how to open a meeting. Hello everyone, thank you for coming. It's about why is everyone here, you know, identifying if it's a first meeting, and perhaps, you know, very simply just explaining the ARM process. And again, use your pro forma as guidance for this. That, like I said, there's nothing wrong with following a process, as it gives good flow to a meeting. Even if you sort of are not a person that likes sort of, you know, you like to do things outside of processes, for meetings it's always good to have a something to follow. Introductions always start with the person who the ARM is for, if they are present. I know on previous ARM training we encourage that people are present, but we know that's not always possible. So it is really important to start with them. It is also important to give them options about breaks and the ability to leave if they need to. So again, as a chair, you know, that's sort of always a good place to start with when you're sort of doing the ARM. So after the ARM meeting, it's really important that you talk to the person who took the minutes. So as a chair, you won't be taking minutes. You will not be able to do that. It's really not possible. So, you know, from somebody who's experienced that, it really isn't possible to do that. So talk to the person who took the minutes. Did they get everything? Does anything need clarifying? Confirm the plan with them, sort of, and who is responsible for any actions that were identified and agreed. So, and I would always recommend that the chair does this with the minute taker directly after, because what you can do, even if the minutes are not sent out, a plan can be sent out really quickly to all the relevant people involved. So I think it's really important that the chair spends that time directly after with the person who's taken the minutes. So now I'm going to sort of briefly talk through the pro forma. So this is our ARM process. So when you're sort of looking at this as the chair, it's really important that you identify which agency identified the need for the ARM. And if you're chairing an ARM, it generally usually is you or your agency that may have identified the need for the ARM. But it's really important that's recorded. So I think as a chair, you need to make sure some of these questions are identified. So the name of the person leading the ARM, so that would be you as the chair. And again, I know this is really sort of simple, but your email address, your telephone number, because sometimes people might need to come back to you about some of the information. So it's really important that information is recorded. Make sure you've got the details of the person who's subject to the ARM. So make sure that's recorded, the date, the time, location. This is, you might do it by Teams, you might do it face to face. So it's always important to sort of identify that. Was the person there, and did they attend? Again, really important, and identify why didn't they attend if they weren't there. There may be very good reason for it. And sometimes as a chair, when you speak to the individual, I mean, the workers may do this as well, but if as a chair you speak to the individual, you can make it really clear that, you know, they can dip in and out of it. So you can reassure them this is for them, it is important they're there, but actually they can leave and come in and out as they choose. Very often, sometimes with individuals, if you're doing it via Teams, you might have an advocate sat with them, doing that meeting with them online, so they can sort of dip in and out as they choose. So and you need to sort of evidence that as chair. So as a chair, it's really important that you make sure this is recorded. So who else is in the arm? You need to make sure. That's why when you do introductions, it's really key that you take their name, their role, the agency, their contact details and email, and for those that are present, and for anybody that's working for the individual where you've gathered some information. Again, it's really important, if they're not there, that you record their name, their role, their agency, and their contact details. And like I say, I know that seems really sort of simplistic, but you know, I've sort of seen times where that's not been recorded, and it's really hard then to try and follow things up if you need to. So as a chair, you need to explain why the arm's being convened. You need to provide an explanation of events leading up to the arm, detail the issues causing concern and some of the associated risks. So list all the risks. You know, are they actual risks? Have they occurred? Is there evidence? Are they perceived and potential risks and believe they could occur? So again, as a chairperson, it's really important that you identify all of these. And you might have other people at the meeting that say, but we've also got this risk as well, and that's fine. So, you know, you need to make sure that as a chair that you're identifying all of those. There is the risk management scoring, which I've been through previously, and I'm going to come on to that. But again, for the risk, each risk that you're talking about, it's really important that you identify which risks. Some of those risks might be identified as extreme because you might have somebody who's hoarding and they have got things piled up in their home. They have had incidents before where it's fell on them, and actually, you know, if that were to happen again, that could cause death or serious injury. Or it could be a lower risk than that because their hoarding level is slightly less. So again, as a chair, you are encouraging that conversation, but you are making sure that that the risk is clearly sort of identified. So yes, again, as a chair, you should be sort of recording this and making sure that the person understands why you've organised the arm, what the individual's experience and understanding of the risk. And again, as a chair, I think it's really important that you start with this so that you know, sort of they're able to sort of present their views. That's how you're sort of, that's a strength-based way, but it's also helping others to understand that their view of risk may be different to your, you know, sort of other people's there. And it's important that some of their risk taking to the individual could be seen as a strength rather than for them. So they might, for example, you might have somebody that is collaborating with a group of people where you as a professional, you know, there are high risks and you believe they might be quite vulnerable, but the individual says, I can go to that group of people and feel safe when I know that I'm at risk from a particular, you know, from others. So again, it's just as a chair, making really clear that you sort of identify that. So always start with the individual. And they might have their own contingency plans, or what happens in a crisis. They might they might be able to identify additional support. But again, as a chair, you need to make sure that everybody at that meeting, they're not there just to offload and share those risks. They are there to also identify, well, actually, we've identified this risk and this is what we can do about it. And because this is a safeguarding process, it is important that people do sort of follow through on that. So as a chair, do make it very clear, okay, you've raised that risk. What actions are you suggesting? What can you identify that can be done about that? So, and I think sometimes as a chair, it's important that you can sort of take that and take that opportunity to say that to other people there. So this is the evaluating risk form, and I suppose the reason why I put this in, because I just thought as a chair it's really important when you're identifying the risks that you say to everybody, this is the tool that we use. Every agency might use different risk management tools, but for an ARM, this is the one that's part of the process. So that's why I think as a chair, have that to the side of you while you're doing that, so that when each risk is being identified, you can go through the scoring for that. Because as a chair, what you will do, if this is the first meeting and you go through the risks and you identify that you believe that it's an extreme risk because there's serious impact on a person's life, then what you're identifying is you're identifying that it meets the criteria for an ARM and that you need to set a next meeting date. So again, sometimes past experiences where ARMs have not necessarily gone through this risk matrix or identified, actually, we believe this is a high risk. People haven't always set the next date or sort of identified, they've just, it's been left with whoever is working with that person to chase it up. So I think as a chair, it is really important that you use this tool and you use this as a way of setting a date. There might be a particular risk. So it may be that you may have had a few ARMs and the individual actually, the risk management plan has worked very well, and actually the risk is agreed by everybody, including the individual, that it's gone down to a moderate risk. So therefore, you don't need to have an ARM review or an ARM meeting, and their needs can be vet via care and support plans or any other care and support plans that might be in place with other organisations. So again, as a chair, it's really important to remember that you do need to go through this and set this up once you've had those discussions, so that people are really clear, sort of, oh right, okay, this risk is really high, we understand that, this is some of the plan that we're going to do to see if we can help reduce that risk or even just manage it, and therefore we are going to have a meeting in 4 weeks' time. Or it could be you say, actually, the risk is so high at that moment about this individual, we're going to meet up again in 2 weeks' time. So that's really important to go through this as a chair. That's why I say that it's really a good thing to have to help the chair to try and keep everything going together and bringing it towards that plan. And then at the end of a meeting, the chair must have approved the minutes, confirm that it's an accurate record of the meeting and discussions. And I think that is just a really important thing. So when you send out, you can send out an initial plan, because if the chair has had that meeting with the minute taker and during that meeting has reaffirmed with everybody that plan and the actions and who is taking responsible, that can go out fairly quickly. But some of the lengthier discussion, that obviously will take a little bit more time to be able to put into writing, or put in the tool that you might want to use, and then that needs to go out to people. So it is important that a chair just identifies and signs it off to say that they're happy with that, because when there's a concern, or if there was anything people didn't agree, it's the chair they need to come back to. That's the person they need to come back and say, actually, you know, we didn't sort of identify this. Hopefully, in the main, you will have, like I say, as a reaffirmed each of the points of the actions that you're going to do. But sometimes it might be that you just, the person recording the minutes just typed something, or got something slightly out of sync. So that's the reason why somebody might come back to you as a chair. And then there is what's called a lead agency checklist. So this is about, has the information sheet been given to the individual that is subject to an arm? That is on the Safeguarding Adults Board website. Has the date of the next meeting been agreed? Are there any agencies that should be involved in the meeting? If yes, then make sure they're included. Who would the adult like this document to be shared with? Because there may be people that weren't at that meeting. And I think, and I do say during the arm training, one of the things that comes out of serious adult reviews, safeguarding adult reviews, is not about the fact of GDPR and all the concerns around that. It's usually that information hasn't been shared. So it is really important that information is shared. And adult risk management is under safeguarding. There is a safeguarding sharing protocol. So I do think that if an individual says, actually, my neighbour is my advocate and I would like them to have a copy because actually they're the ones that will be able to help me work on this plan, then please make sure they have that. Advise your agency's designated arm lead that you have commenced or closed an arm, because we do record quarterly. There is a monitoring form, and then what happens is there are reviews of arms on a quarterly basis. So you will, as an organisation, whether you be a charitable organisation or whomever, will be invited to actually feed back on this and actually identify, how did the arm process work? Was this done? Was that done? How was it followed? So it is really important to do that. So that there is for West Northants. So I realise I haven't put the North Northants one on that. So but I know that on the Safeguarding Adults Board website, all of that is there. The toolkit is there. So please do go there. So closing an arm. So if you are during that meeting deciding that you're closing an arm, then it is really important that you clarify the risk, what the initial risk rating score was and the current risk rating score, because obviously you as individuals will have, as I said, agreed that the risk may be reduced. So you need to sort of identify that, and obviously the rationale for closing an arm. The only main reason for closing an arm is that actually the risk has been reduced, because as I always say, if the risk remains high, an arm must continue to be ongoing. But if you are identifying that a risk has now changed and it becomes a low one, then you can identify that you are closing an arm, and that's the reason why. And some people that work with individuals, because you're bringing in all sorts of different people in relation to an arm, can be successful and you can reduce risk. For some people you can't, and that may be ongoing. But again, for a chair, again, I think use this template, identify this, make it really clear. It's useful. So finally, on my next slide, I just asked within my own organisation for some hints and some tips. And I am really, really sorry because that's very small writing there. So I do apologise. So these are just people that sort of have chaired meetings, and I just asked them to give me some quotes and some tips on, you know, sort of what they found useful. So somebody said to me, I haven't done anything dynamic, but opened by saying why the meeting had been convened, checked all people present, agreed the person met the criteria, and went through each concern in turn and the decision about each risk concern. So they discussed how risk could be reduced, etc., and agreed actions going forward, and who was going to carry them out. Also discussed the risk rating and if we felt an arm was still appropriate. So that's sort of everything that I just sort of said in my slide, but somebody did come and identify that in an email to me. So that is sort of, you know, identifying how they sort of did it, and that's just the tip that they gave me. Somebody said, what I've also done in subsequent arms is outlined any positives or reduction in risk, so that there is positive aspects to it too. We usually have a minute taker and circulate the minutes afterwards. Now, we have a system in the local authority called Eclipse, so we make sure they're uploaded to that system. So each organisation, you will have your own system. So it is really important that you sort of make sure you keep copies of those and put them in whichever system you choose to use. And then somebody said, I would say that sharing the actions and it not just being about adult social care, as we may be leading it, and it's almost about separating yourself from being adult social care and recognising you are the chair and the director for them all. So like I say, if you're leading or you're chairing that, again, you will maybe working for a particular organisation, and as this person pointed out, they might be chairing it for adult social care, but actually it's about directing and leading it for everybody, not necessarily you're there to say, oh no, it's not for us, oh no, it's not for us, because that's not what chairing is about. It's about making sure, well, okay, it may not be for that particular service, so you know you need to identify, so therefore who is the person that needs to do this, how can we do this? So you know, making sure that just because you're chairing a meeting, that you know you are sort of directing everybody there to make sure that you're not just taking it from the perspective of your own organisation when you're sort of chairing. So looking at the time now, just checked in, so we are all good. I can see that I might check the questions in a minute in the chat. So just to identify, there are resources on the Safeguarding Adults Board website. The framework is there. There is an ARM oversight panel. So if you do need to take advice from somebody about an ARM, even as a chair, you're not really sure, then please do go to the Safeguarding Adults Board website, because it will identify whom you can speak to. I know for adult social care, it's Katie Brown, but lots of organisations have their have their leads within that. And also on the Adult Safeguarding Board website, there's safeguarding leads identified on there for various different organisations. So, you know, please do sort of make use of them. This again is just sort of talking about the ARM process. There is a video on there for you and just explains about the toolkit. Yeah, that's so this last one I'm just going to check the chat and then I'll talk to you about the evaluation form. I've got a question here that says, should the worker involved chair the meeting? Ideally, it probably would be better if it was somebody other, because I tend to find the worker that's involved with the individual. You might be out there supporting that individual to be able to participate in that meeting. So I would suggest that really it's probably not best that you chair that meeting. It's probably best to get somebody else within your organisation to actually take the responsibility of chairing, because yeah, you need to really take the role of supporting the individual. I mean, if you have to, you have to, but most I know from an adult social care point of view, we usually like to seek somebody else to take the chairing responsibility for that. There is a question here: if the risk remains high due to a person's reluctance to acknowledge the risk, is there a reviewed timescale? And I would say yes. I mean, if you know, again, you involve that person, you should be identifying, because again, sometimes a risk to you is not always. They might, you have to acknowledge positive risk taking. However, in relation to timescales, as a chair, as a group of people, you need to set that. And if you, like I sort of said, if you do think the risk is quite high, and you've gone through that and the individual still is adamant that that risk is not that high to them, then you do need to identify the timescale. And if it's significant, so we are talking about people that are at serious harm or risk of death. So for example, if you've got somebody that's not taking diabetes medication, you want to meet up fairly quickly around that. You might also want to consider other aspects of legislation, but actually you'll want to meet up fairly quickly. So I know that when I've chaired ARMS, I've sort of started an ARM process. We've met within a week later. We've met a couple of days later. It really depends on the risk that you're identifying. So just sort of bear that in mind. Yes, everybody, you should have access to this presentation. It is being recorded, so it will be on the website. So and what I will say is, in relation to adult risk management, my contact details are also on this. So if you do have any sort of questions or you'd like to make contact with me outside of this, or I always do my best to get back to people as quickly as I possibly can, but very happy for people to make contact with me directly if need be. So is there anybody else? We're coming up to 10:02, so we have sort of got a few minutes. I know there's a lot of you there, so if there's anything else you might like to put in the chat, I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Just to sort of say, there is an evaluation form, so would appreciate if you could do that for us and give some feedback. I've done lots of ARM training, but I haven't done like chairing before. That's it. Chloe's put the in the chat. Chloe's put the link in there, and then everybody gets a certificate of attendance once you've completed that. I haven't done chairing before. It's the first time that I've done around chairing. So, you know, if there are any hints and tips, please do tell me, because I really would appreciate it. So, because like I said, I'm not a trainer. This is just me putting across my personal experience of chairing meetings. I know that sometimes, you know, we forget things. We don't always do it in the way that a process may set things out. That's okay, you know, because we do forget things. But, you know, as long as we've got sort of the, you know, if we use this, I generally will have a process at the side of me that I can make sure we ensure that we've covered everything. So, yeah, if you think there's anything I've missed on here, please do let me know. The slides will be on the Safeguarding Adults Board website. So they will be there for you to to be able to access. So I hope that's helpful. So unless there is, thank you, unless there is anything else, I'm going to sort of say thank you so much for your time. I hope that you found it useful, and yes, hopefully we can speak soon at some point.